Hi there, Totally Amazing here, the home of scientific knowledge, discovery, research, truth, and of course safety, since the 1st of January 2K19. And we're talking about that rather nasty little socket adapter thingy here. Again, you see the one which I've ranted on about before. Just before we get into this, I just want to basically clarify something in the part 2, where I mentioned about passing a current or considering an experiment over both arms. Never do that. That is almost certainly going to kill you. I will obviously possibly have to pull that video down and redo that one at some point, just basically to cover any liability, and we will obviously have to make amendments in the description. Anyway, what we have here, and I want to go into, is this book is a little bit old now, because it's the blue book that we use now, not the yellow one, because this is for the British Standard 7671, the 17th edition of the 17th Third Amendment. We're now on the 18th edition. I do have the blue book, but for the purposes of what we're talking here, it's not really much changes, because what we're looking at is the ways in which this fails, and then I'm going to tell you about a rather nasty little problem in addition. Let's just sort of zoom in a bit if we can. I don't think it's going to pick it up. It might do. There we go. I'm going to read it to you essentially, and we're going to look at the ways in which this fails. And we actually have a better correct version here. This one meets the 1363 minimum regulations, because it's clearly also fused. This horrendous nasty little thing in this hand obviously isn't. Now, in the IET wiring guides, okay, this is obviously the 17th edition, we're looking at page 178, and this is subsection 553, and this covers everything from 553.1 through to 553.2.2. Okay, it says, I'm going to read the whole lot anyway, because essentially these are still bound by the regs anyway. Let's just plug in our correct one, and of course our incorrect one, and let's get on. Okay, 553.1.1, every plug and socket outlet shall comply with all of the requirements of items I and II below, and in addition, with the appropriate requirements of regulations 553.1.2 to 553.2.2. So that's essentially everything down here, and I'm going to need something to point with. So we'll use the correct tool, which happily is a Barco insulated screwdriver with no damage. Okay, part I, except for salve circuits, it shall not be possible for any pin of a plug to make contact with any live contact of its associated socket outlet, while any other pin of the plug is completely exposed. Well, as we can see with our nasty little failure device, we can even do that. I would say that's a complete fail straight away then, and we can actually still do that. So that's a fail, and it does govern plugs as well as socket outlets. Now, with these, what you usually have on the underside you'll have somewhere like BS1363, and on these it's actually BS1363 and fuses are BS1362. That's the British standard. II, it shall not be possible for any pin of a plug to make contact with any live contact of any socket outlet within the same installation other than the type of socket outlet for which the plug is designed. Well, that's a fail because that's not clearly designed for that anyway, and we can still make contact with things that we shouldn't. And 553.1.2 within this book clearly states that except for self or special circuit from regulations 55315, every plug and socket outlet shall be of the non-reversible type, with provision for the connection of a protective conductor. Well, quite whether or not that's actually going to be earthed is a whole new, that's a story for another day, but where it says non-reversible, let's explain. On the correct one, you can't do anything there. You can't do anything about that. No, it won't go in there. However, we can on the bad one. Now, potentially, yes, the correct one here, you could reverse it if you were to jam something into the earth pin and open the shutters, but that would be bypassing a safety feature. On the incorrect one, well, clearly we can reverse this. So that's another failure for our little offender. Now here in table 55.1 for plugs and socket outlets for low voltage, we actually have the applicable British standard approving. So here it's the type of plug and socket outlet. So fused plugs and shuttered socket outlets, which is 2-pole and earth for AC, which is both what these are. It's rated for 13 amps as a maximum, and it's BS 1363 and 1362. Now obviously we don't need to worry about non-fused and industrial type because that's not governed here. And 553.1.201 says every socket outlet for household and similar use shall be of the shuttered type, and for an AC installation shall preferably be of a type complying with 1363. As we said, 1362 is for fuses, but if we look at our nasty little offender here, well, as we already correctly said, that's shuttered, that isn't. I can just confirm this. That's shuttered, I can't put anything in there. That's on the correct one, nothing there. This one is clearly not shuttered at all. So that's a huge fail there. Now, a plug and socket outlet not complying with BS 1363, BS 546 or BS EN 60309-2 may be used in single-phase AC or two-wire DC circuits operating at a nominal voltage not exceeding 250 volts for. There are several things here, like for the connections of electric shavers or whatever, and special characteristics. Let's focus on the last one. Such that a danger would otherwise arise or is necessary to distinguish the function of a circuit. Well, even still, even with certain provisions in place, you wouldn't want to be putting an electric shaver in there, but it's still a failure in the rest of this, so this would not be permitted. Now the rest of this is mostly going to be governing socket outlets and obviously for cable couplers, so we are going to leave that there, and the previous pages are actually for rotating machinery so on and so forth, which is outside of the remit of us here, at least for the time being. Now, in short, basically, when it comes to socket outlets, anything that goes into one is also considered an extension of that and is bound by the same regulations. At least with this horrible little not fit for human usage, the rather poor thing there, at least they haven't lied, because they've not put any of the BS markings on there. If it did, well, the only BS marking that it should have is the fact that their CE mark is complete BS, because here's another little problem, and I think I touched upon it earlier. You should not be able to do that and plug that in, because as we can see there, I can come into contact with potentially live conductors. On the correct version, well, you can't really, basically. And as we said, in here, this one, I'm not going to bother pricing that up, but the 1362 approved things, these are the BS 1362 fuses. That should be inside every plug. And these are the maximum of 13 amp. And obviously there's the BS 1362 marking on there. Now again, because this is considered a plug and also an addition of a socket outlet, it has to, by regulations, has to have a shutter on there. And we can demonstrate that clearly, so you can clearly see the shutters. Let's do this. Should be able to show you the shutters. There you are. You can clearly see the shutters, and the screwdriver will not go in. And that's the same on all of those. And also, it has to be fused. This one has none of that. There is no fuse in here, and in the next part I will show you that. So these are BS 1362 fuses, and they come in a variety of sizes. 3 amp, and, 13s, and the rest of the various sizes. Now let's get to another potentially nasty little problem that we could conceivably find ourselves in if we use one of these. Let's just pretend that we have a socket outlet on the wall, like so. That's attached to a wall or whatever, and we happen to have one of these bar adapters plugged in. That happens to be trailing across the floor to near your armchair or something. That's a bit loose actually, it needs to be tightened down. And it's also missing cable clamps as well, but that's fine. For the purposes of this, I'm not going to worry too much. So here we have a mock-up little situation where we have a block adapter that's plugged into a wall, and this is trailing across a floor to near a chair, or to somewhere else for that matter, and you have this horrible little graunchy thing plugged in, like so. Now we have an interesting little problem, because you would be, bear with me, I need a drink for this. Let's just say that you're on your armchair and you knock over a drink. and something like this happens. Let's just unplug that because I don't want to ruin that. But you could imagine if that was plugged in and that happened. That's now all completely wet. Now in the inside of those, there's no separation whatsoever between line and neutral. So any liquid ingressed into there and you're going to get a pretty sizable explosion. And it will be fairly substantial. And we can see how that is conceivably possible, because if that's, say, trailing across a floor and somebody spills something and it falls in there, well, that's going to make quite an ear-splitting bang. You'd be tempted to go over and plug it. Now, with luck, it should disconnect the supply to that, because essentially you would short this out. But, oh god, it's leaking fluid. But as we said earlier on, that may not always necessarily be the case. And there are a few situations where that can happen. So that's a definite no-no in that regard. Now, as far as their design goes, for whoever's made that, I think their design needs a little work. That's a definite no-no in that regard. And we've just seen by the regulations as to why it's even illegal to have one. Because anything that doesn't meet the British Standards Institute requirements should not be even sold. Now, it does say clearly that on the top it's for export only, and it's leaking everywhere, so there's still clearly liquid in that, as we can sort of see. Now, it does say for export only, so obviously the people who made that are so ashamed of making it, they don't want it sold in their own place of manufacture. And with the CE marking, as we see there, that's not actually going to conform with any European standard. And as I said in part 1, that probably means confirmed execution or confirmed eradication or some other conformity of elimination. Because that's exactly what will happen if you use that. And you could end up like our little friend here, who's still without a name. So we definitely need to give him a name, and we need to actually get that fitted there, because that's how you would end up looking if you was to rely on one of those horrible little adapters. Now, just also on a quick side note, there was, a few years ago, I heard about a girl who was electrocuted in her bath by the use of a cell phone, because she had a cell phone charger that was plugged into a phone, and that was in her hand when she dropped that in the bath. Now, I don't really know exactly about the circumstances to which that happened, but I'm willing to bet one of those nasty little devices, or something similar, could well have played a part in that. Now, in addition, given how cheap these are to make, given the fact that, they're only 99 pence with free delivery, and given how light and compact they are, it's a wonder just how many of those have been sold. And I also kind of wonder how many people have actually had incidences with these. That much they probably, the ever infamous nameless and faceless they, are probably not keen on telling you that fact. But my guess is there's definitely going to have been some involvement with regards to those, and people being hurt, or possibly worse. Now, again, as said, just to reiterate, this book is out of date. We're now on the Blue Book, which is the 18th edition, but pretty much the BS 1363 and 1362 has been the way it has for many, many years, and is probably unlikely to change anytime soon. It is worth noting that an approved device, well, this only meets basic requirements anyway, but nonetheless it still meets them. But the UK socket outlets and associated plugs are some of the safest in the world. In fact, the safest for what they really are. So as long as you're within normal safe parameters, you should not really have a problem. However, if you use one of these, you quite literally are putting your life in your hands. So, as we've already said, unless you want to look like this dude, I would stay well away from those. Like, comment, subscribe as always. And of course, bang the bell so you know when I put out another video. I'm going to see you soon, dear lovely viewer. And until then, stay totally amazing and stay safe. See you soon.